All right. Well, we are very fortunate to welcome Hamilton Ward today to this meetup on navigating creative careers within the business world. Hamilton is an alumni of our Bachelor's of Arts program. He studied digital arts and graduated back in 2015. And he has since been working for Belk's as well as Epic Games currently. And I'm just so excited to have him here. And I wanted to start by, Hamilton, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about your career so far after graduation.
Sure. Yeah. Hi. Thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here. Yeah, I graduated in 2015, which seems almost forever ago now. Right after college, or after I graduated, I spent about 7 months trying to find a job. I found it to be very difficult at the time. I think I was applying as a graphic designer, photographer, wherever I could. And during that time, I was creating work. And I think that was kind of the key thing for me is even though I was searching, I was making my own work. Like I made sure right before graduation, I started a project that would continue after graduation. So that kind of would lead me into something. I had trouble finding work. I was continuing to work on small projects. And I had a friend who started contracting for Belk. And I had met this friend in one of my photo classes. It was Danny Aspen, actually, Danny Lozano. He's the one that got me introduced to Belk. And he told me about this opportunity where it could lead to greater possibilities. And I was like, you know what, let's do it. So I applied there, and it was probably the most boring job I've ever had. We would select swatches of color for the website for Belk. So the photo studio would send us images, and we would just take a little selector in Photoshop, click the color, and that was our job 8 hours a day. It was really boring, but the nice thing is that our bosses knew it was boring, and so they would let us kind of do our own thing while we were doing it. So while I was working this really boring job, I would be writing down ideas for photo shoots for when I would get home from work. So it kept me like sort of mentally active while I was there. And then that led me to a position for HR after about a year of doing that. And I got that position in HR. It was a digital designer. And then that led me into communications for Belk. And then I lost my job after COVID. And then I was looking for more work, and I saw a position at Epic, and I applied there. I think that the interesting thing is what kind of got me through the door at Epic were those projects that I made right after graduation, like literally the same project. Because right after graduation, I would do these sort of video game sort of films. And so those same projects were in my portfolio that I sent to Epic, and that's what kind of got me through the door. So I think having that project right after graduation helped me a ton.
That's really great. And one of the things, as I talk to students thinking about different areas to go into, you've had this experience to work now for more of this technology, creative space, and then Belks was more in that corporate space. Talk to us a little bit about how you navigated talking to non-creatives. So it's like you're trying to get your vision across. You're trying to, do your work effectively. Yeah. And I'm sure you've worked with many different, people who did not come from a creative background. So how do you navigate those relationships and be able to communicate effectively with them?
That is a great question. I think that's an ongoing process, right? So the thing about corporate America, and I love corporate America because there's a lot of possibility for an artist in corporate America, because what corporate America is starting to realize is that they can teach an artist a technical thing easier than they can teach a technical person how to be an artist. And so artists are extremely sought after for corporations now. And you can find them in the oddest positions. Like they had no graphic designer in all of HR. In all of HR, there was no graphic designer. They had no design. They were designing trainings for the entire corporation in Word. And so there's just a lot of opportunities is what I was going to say to that. And so coming into that environment where, you have these ideas, you're trained, because of UNC Charlotte, I was trained in After Effects, I was trained in Premiere, I was trained in all these things. And then you come up to someone that's like, oh yeah, can you make this editable in Word? Like, can you design this in Word so I can edit it? And so you have to basically kind of tiptoe and be like, look, this is what I can do for you. You kind of have to show them like, this is what we can do. We can take this Word document that you have and we can make something that moves that has some movement. Like you basically have to like lead them through, and it's a process. It's not going to happen overnight, but you kind of show them what you can do, and then it raises the bar for other people, I think. But it's definitely a process. You just have to have, I think the main thing is a ton of patience, um, because they just don't know. And you can't, hold them accountable for things you don't know. You just have to teach them and show you what you can do for them, I guess. If that makes sense. I don't know if that's sort of a weird way to say it, but it's just a lot of patience.
Yeah, and can you describe any challenges in addition to helping them understand, like going from Premiere to Word, or
Yeah.
like you said, the technology was just kind of dated. Were there other challenges, personality wise, or work culture, or some other things that maybe you ran into that you were not used to in a creative space that you came from UNCC?
Not, I mean, not particularly. I mean, everyone seemed, I think I was fortunate to be in HR. Everyone was very open to my ideas. There weren't any sort of particular challenges. The biggest thing was, I will say I think there was a challenge, is that getting set up, as having them trust you, I think was a challenge, because you have people who've done this for years, literally years. Like I was working with someone who had been in the instructional designing space for like 12, 15 years or so. And so this is how she had done it. And so there was a lot of resistance there. Um, and so just slowly just building that relationship, just extending that olive branch, don't resist them, just kind of work with them, and you kind of come to a middle ground. But I can't think in culture wise that really kind of struck out to me. I think the hardest thing for me was not being surrounded by other creatives. I feed off of that energy. Like you put me in a room with a bunch of creatives, we're gonna have a great time. You're gonna just kind of, spitball and everything. So learning to find ways to kind of motivate yourself in a creative space without having that creative sounding board around you, I think was the hardest part.
And you mentioned something really great earlier about how you were working on projects outside of your job.
Mm-hmm.
And then that led to, having the correct type of work portfolio to provide to Epic. So do you have other tips like that for students who, maybe they're not in their, ideal profession right now, but how can you, what could you say to them, if they're trying to work outside of their internship or outside of their job right now, preparing for, that future ideal role?
I mean, after school, it's all about the portfolio, right? So um, you make the work that you want to make the work that you want to lead you into a profession that you want to be in. Like if you wanted to get into for instance, if you wanted to be a designer here in Charlotte, you need to make sure your portfolio is just top notch. So just constantly striving, constantly teaching yourself. I set aside anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour a night. I try to go on YouTube and kind of keep those skills in check, because the technology is moving so quick. Even for this job at Epic, on one of the requirements was, they said you didn't have to know the Unreal Engine, which is their game engine, but it would be nice to. So I started watching tutorials, trying to teach me that, just trying to keep up, because I feel like this technology space is just moving so quick. So just constantly working on projects that you want to work on, I think is the thing, because that's also led me to see that there are things that I don't like to do. Like I thought at one point that I wanted to be a graphic designer. I realized I don't like designing things, because I would work on these projects for myself and be like, this is really not that much fun. And I would have more fun doing photo shoots or making videos, and so that kind of, it helps to clarify a lot of that sort of ambiguity of your career choices as you're working on your own personal projects.
So before we got on the call, Hamilton was telling me about what he's currently working on at Epic. So I would love for him to share a little bit more. I know he just finished a big project, but just tell us a little bit more about your day to day, some of the things that you're doing in your current
Sure.
role.
So my current role is, they're called game capture specialist, which is basically a cinematographer inside of the game. And so the way it works is that we create scenes in the game and capture it. Um, and then we take it into Premiere and we cut it. We basically create movies, but instead of having the camera outside of the game, we're in the game filming. And so it's a lot of fun, because you're in a virtual space getting the shots that you want to get. You can do some wild shots that you wouldn't be able to do otherwise. And so the big project that we were working on was the trailer for the latest season that just came out. And that was a blast. I mean, I had 2 scenes in there that I got to do. And I also had the chance to light it using our engine as well, which was just so much fun.
That's cool. What are some of the softwares you're currently using to do the role?
There's an in-game sort of engine that we use, and then there's the Unreal Engine 4 that we use as well. So the game Fortnite has its own sort of recording software that we utilize, and then we kind of piggyback on the Unreal Engine to do certain scenes that we need a little bit more push on it.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. Well, I will open it up to the students on the call if you all have any questions.
I had one. I was wondering how long it took you to find a job after graduation, like when you started looking, like right after graduation or sooner.
7 months. I remember it exactly. It was 7 months. It was exactly 7 months. It was tough. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. It was definitely tough because doing the job hunt, like I said, I lost my job at Belk back in, I guess, August or June of last year. And so, I remember that job search, and it's very difficult. And it's not fun, and it's frustrating a lot of times. But what I'm starting to realize is that people are looking less at your CV and more at the portfolio, more at the work that you do. And I've heard it many times, and the people that we hire too, that they have a drive. They want to hire people that have a drive. And so anything that you can do to sort of show them that you have that drive. You might, like I said, I don't know how to use the Unreal Engine. I didn't learn that in college. I didn't think I would be doing any sort of 3D sort of rendering. But they knew I would be able to pick that up because I said, hey, I'm here to learn. I'm here to kind of take it all in, basically. But I know some people that found jobs right away. I was just not fortunate enough for that.
I'll ask
Go
you a
ahead,
question. So in one of our classes, we're really focusing on our portfolios, online portfolios, our websites, and really thinking about how we're branding ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
What kind of work we're putting out there. I don't know if you have any recommendations for how to curate your work or how to narrow it down or how to best like present yourself to an employer so that they know you have that drive and that you're here to learn and you're, I don't know, any sort of advice like that would be great.
I mean, I hate to say it, but social media is very huge. I didn't realize how huge it was until after they hired me. They were saying, oh yeah, we went on your YouTube page and we saw the videos you were making, and we were just really inspired by that. We could see the kind of work that you were going to do. And so it's not just the website. The website, obviously, you have to have, because not only do you need it for job searching, but you need it to apply for shows. All shows require a website, basically. But you also need to curate your Instagram. If you do YouTube, you need to make sure you have your YouTube up to stuff. So all of these social platforms have to speak together, including LinkedIn, because they're checking that. So employers are checking everywhere. And so it takes time. You have to carve out time out of your day to really sit down, like you said, curate the work that you're putting out and making sure you have your best foot forward. And you need to trust your sort of peer group and your support group. And that's generally going to be the people that you graduate with, the people that you meet in your classes. I mean, Aspen, you know this, I still hang out with Brittany and Danny and everyone else from our photo classes, because I know that they went through the same thing I did, and I trust them. And so when I'm adding stuff to my website, or when I'm, adding stuff to Instagram, sometimes I'll send them a little preview and be like, what do you guys think about this? How do you, or just spitballing ideas. So that answer your question? Sorry, I just went off on a tangent.
No, absolutely. It really does. And I think the most interesting thing to hear over and over again recently is social media, because that seems very daunting, I think.
It sucks.
Yeah, but it's also very fascinating to hear that that's specifically what your employers went and looked at, even more than your website. So
yeah, even more. I mean, like they keep bringing up the YouTube thing. And for me, the YouTube that I had was just like this fun side thing that I was doing just to kind of keep me busy. But it was specifically in conversations that I've had after I was hired. They're like, oh no, we stalked your YouTube hard. But again, this was a video position, so it makes sense they would look at the YouTube. But if you're applying for a photography position, for instance, they're going to be all over that Instagram. They want to make sure that I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. Maybe just to see the type of personality you project. And so I think they could get a real sense of who I was by going through and looking at some of my stories on Instagram, some of that. And so they know who they're getting when they're hiring, because especially at a company like Epic, they're getting, I don't even know how many applications in, you know.
I was curious, Hamilton, could you walk us through your interview process? So you apply for, Epic Games. Can you talk to us about the different steps that you went through to getting that final, the paperwork saying you are hired?
Sure.
I
Yeah.
know
No.
it's different for every place, but it'd be very interesting to hear about your process.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty straightforward, actually. I was in the middle of talking. The hardest part was I was in the middle of talking to other positions at the same time, and so sort of juggling that with, I think, was the most difficult. But Epic was really easy. I reached out to them. I applied through their website, and they set up a quick Zoom to talk to me. The recruiter talked to me. After that, he set me up with 2 other interviews, so a total of 3 interviews was the thing. So, and they just talked to me a little bit, very casual. I didn't have to show work. They had seen my work, and it was really just a way to get to know me and get to see what I was doing and kind of where my mindset was, I think.
Do you remember how long it took from the beginning to the offer?
Well, it was
Was
weird
it months
because
or weeks or?
this was probably a few weeks, probably like 2 weeks, I think.
That's
But
really
I
quick.
didn't start for like another month because the position wasn't open for then. So it was that part was weird. That part was weird, is that you get to meet these people and you're like, you have a good vibe with them, and then you have to wait a month before you actually get to work. That was probably the oddest part, but that wasn't so bad. Another job that I was applying to was a lot worse. I mean, they had me do, this was for like more of an HR position, more of what I did at Belk. They had me do like a 2-hour test for them to see the kind of work. Like I did not like that. That was not fun for me. So depending on the kind of job, I guess people have different sort of hurdles to go through. But the thing I like to sort of hold on to is just be yourself. I think, it's easier said than done a lot of times, but just be yourself and trust in the work that you're showing.
So I'll ask a question that I think the students will want to know, but what recommendations, in addition to social media, a strong portfolio, what would you tell students if they're wanting to work in the gaming industry on a creative way? How do you get your foot in the door? That seems like a very competitive field. How do you really help yourself stand out? And what are some of maybe the skill sets that right now, while they're still in school, or even right after it, as an alumni, what are some things they could be working on?
Anything with motion. So even though I had never done any sort of 3D modeling or anything, I've never even used the Unreal Engine. My classes at UNC Charlotte, taking with Heather on After Effects, has helped me out huge, because I knew how to keyframe. So I already had that sort of mindset when I came in. So a lot of these skills are transferable, thankfully. But really anything with motion, anything with movement, the industry right now, the corporate America just loves video. They love animation. Any of that, they'll gobble up, because it's a hard skill set to not even, I guess, sort of wrap your head around. If you can animate with keyframes, you're going to be fine in the corporate world. Is my take. That's my personal take. Just coming into, I'm thinking about Belk. So imagine, like, you walk into Belk, into a regular corporation. It doesn't have to be Belk, could be Lowe's, could be anywhere, and they're still designing, with PowerPoint, with Word, and you're like, hey, look, I can make this move. It blows their minds, and they just gobble it up, and they will keep you there. And so it's weird, because you're almost like a big fish in a small pond, as opposed to, just in a very highly competitive corporate environment where you have a whole bunch of designers around you competing for the same position. So you just kind of have to be smart about where you want to go, depending on what you want to do, I think.
Thank you. Students, do you have any other questions? Or Aspen, do you have another question?
I just have one. I know I follow you on Instagram, and you posted a documentary about pools. Do you think, I guess, films with social commentary, does that hinder, I guess, the way jobs look at you? Like, for instance, I'm doing a BLM mural on campus.
Okay.
And I want to put it on my resume, but at the same time, I don't know if that's going to be a hindrance as far as like interviewing and stuff like that.
I mean, I think I would hope it wouldn't be. I really hope it wouldn't be. I mean, I think it's unfortunately, I think it's going to depend on the type of job you're going for. I think there are places that are going to be a little bit more button up, and they might not like that. You know, I will say though that the pool video you're referring to got me that job at Belk. So thankfully, I had someone that saw that and was like, "All right, I like what you're doing here. Let's bring you in." So as long as you're proud of the work, put it out there, have them see it. And if they don't want you because of the work you're doing, maybe you don't want to be there in the first place, right? So my advice, my opinion would be put the work that you're proud of out there. Don't let it hold you back.
Okay, thank you.
Hamilton, what do you think is the best social media? If you had to choose one, because I know students are torn between, you know, how many social media pages do I need to really get my work out there?
You need all of them. I mean, it sucks. I mean, honestly, you need as many as possible. And as it changes, like for instance, I really don't want to use TikTok. I really don't. But I know eventually I'm probably going to have to if I want to keep building my audience. And so you have to look at it as a job, because it really is a job, right? Instagram right now, Instagram is always popular. I know people keep trying to leave it, and you'll notice this, that people be like, a lot of photographers be like, all right, I'm done with Instagram, I'm moving to Twitter. Within a week, they're back on Instagram posting. And so it really depends on what you want to do. But I think Instagram is just a nice little bubble where you can have photographers, videographers, animators, illustrators. Everyone can have like a foot in the door there.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I think you had a question.
Yeah, sorry. I'm trying to think of how to word it. Do you think there, in your opinion, are there a lot of opportunities for jobs where you give them a portfolio that's kind of amateurish, but they can see potential in it? Or do you think like you need a like portfolio that looks as good as someone who graduated from CalArts, you know?
I think that's an interesting question. So I think it depends on the job. I think it depends on if they want to take you under their wing and help you out, right? It has to, I think, oh man, that's tough. I think there has to be enough there for them to see, okay, we can work with this individual. We can raise them up. We can teach them that. But I wouldn't put anything in a portfolio unless I was extremely proud of it. So that's where sort of your peer group comes in, the people that you trust to be like, no, take that out, or, you know, maybe this needs a little bit more work before you put it in. I don't think you need to have the end all be all portfolio. I didn't have an end all be all portfolio, but I had work that I was very proud of, and I was proud to talk about it, because they can tell when you're interviewing how you feel about the work that you're showing them, right? So you want to make sure that you're behind the work you put out there, at least 100%, in my opinion. It doesn't have to be, you know, like a Pixar level film that you did, for instance, but it has to be something you're proud of.
Okay, thank you.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's the hardest part is the portfolio. I still struggle with that sometimes when I'm adding pieces or taking pieces out. You know, I'll have, you know, multiple portfolios too, for instance. So I'll have one where if I'm applying for a more rigid corporate job, for instance, I'll have something more geared towards that, where if I'm applying for something a little bit looser, maybe they wear t-shirts instead of polos or something, I'll have something a little bit different there. So multiple portfolios helps out with that too. I guess do your research, I guess is what it comes down to. Find out kind of the culture of the jobs that you're looking for and making sure they're a good fit for you. Because if they're not a good fit, you're going to be miserable. It doesn't matter how much you're getting paid. You're going to be miserable at a job that's not a good culture fit for you.
I was about to ask you, have you been in a job thus far that has not been a good culture fit for you? And
No.
How did you navigate that?
No, I turned down a job that wasn't going to be a good culture fit for me. One of the things that I learned from Belk is, again, how to sort of navigate the corporate environment. And one of the things I learned was just how important culture was and how important leadership was. And there was a job I was applying for, and for instance, something the interviewer said to me about how he wanted butts in the seats at all time. And I was like, that's not how that works. I don't like that. You know, that doesn't going to sit well with me. And it was a very high paying job, but I had to turn it down because I knew if I took this, I would be absolutely miserable. And so just when you're interviewing, think of the interviewing process as a chance for you to interview them too, right? They're not just interviewing you, you're interviewing them. So one of the questions that I'll always ask a job, what is your culture like? Give me examples of your culture and talk to me about leadership training and how your leaders react. Give me examples of that. And that will tell you almost all you need to know. Depending on how that interviewer, usually a recruiter, reacts to that question, tells you all you need to know. So when I asked Epic that, for instance, they said they've done great strides to make sure that there's not a lot of burnout, because when you're working in a video game industry, there's going to be a ton of burnout. And so it's how these companies react to that burnout, how they treat their employees. And so they talked to me about how we have off every other Friday during the COVID pandemic to make sure that we're able to kind of defrag from that. We have sort of intermittent, like little vacations here to make sure that we take the time, like little things like that go a huge way. And sort of that culture, that mentality is what kind of sold me on it, because other jobs will not do that, you know? So make sure you're asking questions too during these interview processes.
And that can be a scary thing, especially, you know, if you are pursuing a position, you think it might be the only one, and then you turn it down because you don't think the culture is good. A lot of students will think, well, gosh, what if I don't get another job? You know, take whatever I get.
There's always jobs. I think there's always jobs. I mean, and I know that sounds crazy to say, but I really do think there's always jobs in the creative field. You just have to be smart about how to look at them. Like, I don't think, you know, like I said, as a you know, someone that wanted to get into graphic design and photography right after college, I would have never thought of Belk unless I had that friend be like, hey, you should check out this position. And that I was looking at, you know, firms and studios and stuff like that. So you have to be sort of creative in how you apply for these jobs and where you think work is.
Mm-hmm. That's so true. I was just curious, when you think back to yourself, you know, 6, 7, 8 years ago when you were in your undergrad, what advice would you have given yourself now, I guess, you know, having lived now, you know, working full time for all these years? And now you can impart this wisdom to students.
That's a good question. What advice would I have given myself? I guess just be open to possibilities. Be open to possibilities and make as many friends as you can, because you never know where these people are going to go and who might be able to offer you a helping hand when things are down. And also, yeah, I think just keeping that friend group close, because right after you graduate, I think right after graduation is probably like the hardest time, because you've just gone through this rigorous process where you're constantly making work and you're constantly pushing yourself, and all of a sudden you have no one telling you to do anything. And it's just such a weird transition. I said this earlier, make sure to have a project that you start right before graduation that you can continue after graduation, because that's going to help you push. And make sure to constantly keep in contact with your friends that you graduate with. You know, go out and, if you're a photographer, do shoots with them. If you're a designer, get together, have a little design sesh. You know, just make sure that you're keeping people close and you're helping each other out. I think that's what I would tell myself, because that's been the biggest benefit to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people don't even think about their peers as being probably the most accessible network that they have initially, because they're very close to them. So that's a really great point.
Oh, they're great. I mean, I'm a much better artist today because of my friend group, because of those peers that I met in college. Mm-hmm. You know, we build each other up, we help each other out. You know, even just from a fine art standpoint, when I'm applying to shows, you know, people let me know about shows that are coming up that they think I would be a good fit for. And again, that social media aspect. Yeah, it's great. I love it. I love the arts community here in Charlotte. I mean, Charlotte has one of the best arts community. And I know I'm going off on this crazy tangent, but Charlotte has one of the best arts community I've ever been a part of, and it's wonderful.
That's great.
And don't get frustrated. Try not to get frustrated, because it's going to suck sometimes, but just don't get frustrated.
Natalie has a couple questions.
Sure.
She wants to know, how long is your contract at Epic? And how are you, and how are you sending over specific portfolios? different websites or videos. So I guess your process of that.
Sure. My contract was for 6 months, but they extended that out to a year, hopefully, full time. All these, oh man, it's so weird. So I think a lot of times, in my opinion, I think contracting, so there's two types of contract work, basically. There's contractors that come in for a specific project and are there for like 6 months, 3 months, and then peace out. And then there's contractors that come in for a longer period of time. And it's almost a way for companies to kind of test them out before they're offered a full-time position. And so be mindful of that when you're looking for contract work, because a lot of times contract work is your way, is your foot in the door to these corporations. And it's great for people that are just coming out of college, is to sort of start as a contractor and then sort of move your way up. And then the portfolio piece, it's really just on their website. They'll have, please send in your portfolio. If you're applying for a creative position, there should be a portfolio section on there. If there's not, I would be a little concerned about that. And then there have been jobs I've applied for where they didn't have it, and I would just put it in the notes, or, do you have anything to say? And then I would have, like, please make sure to check out this work. And so I keep my main portfolios on my website. Oftentimes I will direct them to my Instagram. I have a Vimeo page that I'll direct people to, because then they're looking at other work that you might not have in your portfolio because you can only have a certain amount of pieces. So you want to lead them through. And then LinkedIn, unfortunately, it's super important too. So make sure to do the LinkedIn, because that's been a big thing too.
And I love LinkedIn.
Yeah, I do not like LinkedIn.
I'm sorry you don't like it.
I do not like LinkedIn.
It does need an artistic touch. I was talking to students about that a few weeks ago. I was like, they need to get a creative designer in here and make it more creative and artistic friendly. Yeah. But
it's a great tool. It's just, it can be a little weird when you're trying to connect with people going through LinkedIn. It's a weird dance sometimes.
May I ask, what platform do you host your website on?
Squarespace. I love Squarespace. Mm-hmm. It's great. It looks great. It's easy to use. I'm not a web designer. Mm-hmm. Jeff will tell you I'm not a web designer, and Squarespace has come in handy so much. And a lot of times they're sort of geared towards artists, so it helps out a ton to have those sort of templates set in.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, Squarespace is pretty easy to use.
Mm-hmm. And it looks good too. Like, you want, and Asma kind of touched on this a little bit. You want to make sure you're building your brand. You're constantly building your brand, and it's such like I think people kind of look down on that word brand, but really, it's a great thing, because you need to. I'll tell you, the best advice I ever got as an artist, I think this kind of goes into brand, is when you sell a piece of artwork, you're not necessarily selling that piece of art. You're selling yourself too, right? So when people buy a piece of work, not everyone, but oftentimes when they buy a piece of work, they have, people over, pre-COVID for wine and cheese, for instance. They point to that work. They're not going to talk about the work. They're going to talk about the artist behind that work. And so think about that. Think about who you want to be to the rest of the world. What kind of image you want to project out into the community? Because I think that's a lot of it. Don't be an imposter to yourself, but really just think about that image that you're projecting out, because you never know who's going to see that post, who's going to see that work, who's going to see that story that you do, and reach out to you.
That is such a great point. Thank you for sharing that. The why behind the what. Why you do what you do. So important. What other questions does the group have? Then feel free to write them in the chat, or you can just turn on your microphone. As I await questions, one last question that I'll pose is, where do you see yourself in 5-10 years? Do you have, other careers that, you're working towards, and this is a stepping stone, job for you at the moment? Do you have a dream job that you're heading towards?
I mean, right now, Epic is pretty much a dream job situation for me. I'm getting to be creative every day with a group of great creative people. I'm extremely thrilled about the work that we're putting out, which is not always the case, right? So I'm loving Epic. I would love to stay here for as long as they'll have me, obviously. But I'm also constantly working on my own work. I don't want to lose that drive in my own personal work. And it's tough now because I have to be creative for, 8, 9, 10 hours a day. And then coming off of that and trying to create my own work, my own projects, it's extremely difficult. But I want to make sure that I'm still growing that because I love to make, I love to create. I love telling stories. I have film ideas that after, the pandemic, I'd love to get out there and shoot some more. So I would hope to see myself in a company like Epic. And I would hope that I'm still making work for myself.
No, that's exciting. That's really exciting. And I just put in for everyone to have links to your personal website, your art website, and to your LinkedIn. So, and Hamilton said you're welcome to connect with him. So please do.
Yeah, if you have questions or anything, please reach out to me. I was right where you guys are now. So yeah, please feel free to reach out to me, and any help I can give, I'm happy to do it.
Well, I really appreciate you being here. And Natalie, did you have a final question?
Yeah, I had a quick one. I was wondering what you used to design your CV and resume, because I really liked how it's designed.
Oh,
I've only seen boring ones.
Yeah, so it's funny you'd mentioned kind of butting heads against people like that. People don't like that, right? So they don't like they like the word template. Here's your resume. In my opinion, if you're applying for a designing job, if you're applying for a creative position, the first thing they're going to see is that resume. So you want it to have just a punch. So what I did is I looked at I typed in Google creative resumes, and then I just pickpocketed little things that I liked. I was like, oh, I love what they're doing here. I wonder how this would do. And then so I just brought it into Illustrator, and I think InDesign eventually was my latest one. I brought it into InDesign finally. But you'll hear a lot of people kind of say, just do a regular resume. And I just personally, I think you need to go for a punch. You need to have that. I'm a creative. Here you go. Have you had feedback about your resume? I haven't had feedback from Epic. No. I have had feedback from Belk about the one though, and they loved it. They said that was the first thing they noticed. Was the resume, and they could tell that I was a creative because, especially if you're a graphic designer, you want to lead with that, or an illustrator too.
That's a really great question. Any final questions? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, but again, it's all also about where you're applying to. So just keep that in mind. But I always like to lead with a little bit of color.
Well, thank you for sharing that.
Is there any last skill set that you wish you had had before you had graduated? Or I guess maybe for the photographers out there, should they also know graphic design? Should they also be pretty good with Illustrator? Should they, is there any other little thing to add to your skill set before you leave school and start applying for jobs?
I mean, if you're photography specifically, video, I really, it's weird right now where people are just pushing for video so much because there's this idea, and you hear it all the time as a freelance photographer. It's why am I paying you? I can just shoot myself. I have this phone here that can shoot. I have this camera right here that I got, at Best Buy that I can do this. I don't need you. And so you don't hear that as often with video because I think having that mindset around, because you need more tools. You need to know how to cut and edit. And so having that in your back pocket to be like, hey, I'm a photographer. I'm also a videographer, could help out. Yeah, it's a weird thing right now where video is just taking over, where motion, animation, like I said, After Effects is taking over. And I'm kind of hoping it goes back because it's almost becoming just overbearing to my senses, right? Anytime you're on Instagram, it's just video after video after video. I want that stillness, I want that nice, non-kinetic design right here. So right now the trend is motion and video, but it could always swing back. But if they're looking to get into the industry now, I would say learn anything you can about film and how to see an image, how to set up a shot, because that helps me with my still photography too. You know, lighting, proper lighting. Oh my God, it's great. Like I didn't know, for instance, Aspen. So learning this Unreal Engine, right? I didn't know how to do it at all. I'd never opened it before, but I was bringing skill set that I learned in studio lighting. You know, I mean, it's crazy. So even though I'd never used that program, I knew how to light because of that. So lighting, motion, After Effects, Premiere, all that stuff, if they want to keep growing. Because it's also going to set you apart, I think.
Thank you for that question, Aspen.
And if you just want to learn, you know, how to design in PowerPoint too, because a lot of corporations they still love PowerPoint. They still love PowerPoint.
I don't think PowerPoint's going to go away anytime soon.
And I'm joking, but seriously, if you're a graphic designer, please learn how to design in PowerPoint because they'll love that too.
Mm-hmm.
As crazy as it sounds. As crazy as it sounds. Like,
designing Word documents, templates. Absolutely. All right. Any final questions?
Yeah, I have one. I think it's kind of tangential. Someone was asking earlier if you think it's a good idea to have political work in your portfolio. And you say animation's really good. I've made a couple animations, but they all have crass humor and foul language and things like that. It probably just depends on what company you apply to, but would that be a bad idea to include that in a portfolio?
It all depends on the company. It all depends on the company. If you're applying to something like Adult Swim, you know, down in Atlanta, I'm sure they'd love that. It really just all depends on the company at that point. Again, I still believe as long as you are proud of the work that you're putting out there, you know, go for it. But again, I wouldn't send that to something, you know, I don't know, like Disney or something, if there's crass humor, you know, so just be mindful of that. And that's where kind of the research goes into learning about the company. Before my interview, I should have mentioned this earlier, before I do any sort of interview, I'll go online, I'll check Glassdoor, I'll you know, check all of the things. I'll Google the company, find out what happened. So I know I can have an idea of the culture. I won't know specifically. I'll have kind of a rumbling of the culture before I go in there. So I'll know that, hey, I think they'll get a kick out of this. For instance, there's, you know, it's funny you say this. There was a piece I did that in my Epic portfolio that I had that I was a little concerned about. It was a piece where, I'll just describe it real quick. It was basically this guy out hunting, and it starts off beautifully shot. You know, he's in the woods, he's hunting, and he's talking about just going out there, getting away from it all. And it kind of takes a really dark overtone, and you start to realize that he's not hunting animals, he's hunting a group of people. And so there's like this little twist there, a dark twist. And I was very concerned for a minute about putting that in my Epic portfolio. I was like, are they gonna think I'm crazy? Like, I don't know if I should do this. But at the end of the day, I was like, you know what? I love this piece. I'm really proud of this piece. I think it shows off my skill set. And I left it in there. And I also checked with some friends. I was like, hey, is this okay? Am I crossing a line here? So yeah, it just comes back to just sort of trusting your own taste, I guess, and making sure you're applying to the right spot.
Thank you.
Such great advice. Finding the right culture, so important.
Yeah, because I know it's tempting, especially after college, because you have all these bills to pay, but don't chase the dollar too much, because you really will be miserable. I couldn't do it. I mean, you know, the thing is you're not leaving, what did they say? It's like, you don't leave a job, you leave a manager. And so that manager, that leader is going to be kind of the herald of that culture that they set up. And so just be mindful of that. There are jobs out there. There's opportunities out there. Don't feel like you need to take something just to take something. Make sure that you're happy, because at the end of the day, that happiness is going to help you grow, in my opinion.
Could not have said it better myself. Well, Hamilton, thank you so much for being with us today. This has been extremely helpful.